Darwin's theory was a bit like that first movie of a galloping horse, revolutionary when compared to still photography, but only a modest step on the path to full-length feature films. The next step on the biology's path, explaining inheritance, was already made by the time Darwin died, but he did not know it. Really? Nor did any other prominent scientist, although decisive experiments had already started in the 1856, 3 years before Darwin published The Origin. Even the scientists who performed these experiments would not live to see the avalanche of progress he triggered, which would eventually engulf all of biology. That scientist was an Austrian monk, Gregor Mendel. Yes, he was a physicist, right? He used to study at Vienna University, who studied in Vienna and entered St. Thomas Abbey in Brno, where he would experiment on more than 20,000 pea plants before he became an abbot. For his experiments, he deliberately chose pea plants that differed in several discrete features. One plant might produce smoothly round yellow peas, whereas the other would produce wrinkly green peas, but none with in-between color or shape. Of course, it is all about how it's the algebra, right? How it algebra looks like, right? Other pea plants differed sharply in flower color, pod shape, or stem length. Mendel cross-fertilized these plants and analyzed their offspring, thousands and thousands of plants. What he saw was that these features often do not blend in the offspring. The offspring's first or second generation produces either round or wrinkly peas, but none with the intermediate shape, of course. And the different feature can be inherited independently, such that the offspring might sport combinations, round and green, wrinkly and yellow, that neither parent harbored. Yes. The cause of inheritance behaved like discrete and indivisible particles. Each parent carried two particles responsible for traits like roundness or color, but would pass only one of them onto its offspring, of course. Different features were inherited through different kinds of particles and could thus combine and recombine independently. Yes. Mendel worked in an academic backwater far from the intellectual currents of his time, and he committed the error that snuffed many an academic career then and now. He published little and in a long place, in his case a local naturalist journal. And as bad luck would have it, the abbot who succeeded him would burn Mendel's papers after his death. But 34 years after its publication in 1865, Mendel's sleeping beauty of a discovery would be lost by the Dutch botanist Hugo de Vries, of course, who independently performed experiments similar to those of the Mendel. Yeah. Historians still argue whether he truly rediscovered Mendel's laws or whether he learned about Mendel's work during his own experiments and tried to hide his knowledge. The searing disappointment of the having not just been scooped, but scooped by the 3 decades, could certainly explain the impulse to rewrite history. Be that as it may, rediscovered Mendel's law were, and from then on, they spread like a wildfire. Yes. Yeah, like passing through the threshold, right? Make it visible, make it physical. They became the basis of a whole new branch of biology, the science of genetics. Traits that behave as Mendel described exist in many plants and animals, including humans. Some of our Mendelian traits are as odd as the consistency of earwax, wet or dry, yes. But others are as important as the major blood groups, A or B, or diseases like sickle cell anemia. Yes, I did it. As it turned out, De Vries was to receive a consolation prize. He is a grandfather of the word gene, whose importance endures in both science and popular culture. De Vries had called the particles of inheritance that Mendel had described pangenes, and a few years later, the Danish geneticist Wilhelm Ludwig Johansen would simply drop the pan. I see. Johansen contributed two further important words to the language of modern biology. He coined the word genotype and distinguished it from the phenotype. Yes, of course. The new ideas, right? In today's language, a genotype comprises all genes of an organism, all its DNA, whereas the phenotype comprises everything else you could observe about the organ, its size, its color, whether it has a tail or feathers or a carapace. To see this distinction is crucial, because it allows us to tell cause from the effect when the organisms change. Take the word mutation, which was already used 200 years earlier for any dramatic change in an organism's appearance. In the early 20th century, it was sometimes applied to Mendel's units of inheritance and sometimes to the organism phenotype, leading to endless confusion about causes and effect of change. Confusion about causes and effects of the change. A century later, we know that mutation change a genotype, like the mutation that alter the blueprint of the light-sensing opsin proteins in some of our distant animal ancestors, of course. Such genotypic change can cause changes in a phenotype, and some changed phenotypes become innovations, novel and useful features, like our ability to see the world in color, of course. Only once we have distinguished between the genotype and phenotype. Only once we have distinguished between the genotype and phenotype can we ask a question crucial to understand life's innovability. How do mutations cause changes in the phenotypes and bring forth innovations? Because that was the other great mystery left unanswered at the time of Darwin's death. Where do innovations come from? where do the new variants come from that selection is? And especially those variants that improve an organism, help it survive a little longer, appear sexier to a mate, or have more babies? One could answer this question with various platitudes. New variants arise randomly by chance. This platitude is still used today, but Darwin was already familiar with it, and he knew that it explains exactly nothing. He opens a chapter on laws of variation in the origin like this. I have hitherto sometimes spoken as if the variations had been due to the chance. Thus, of course, is a wholly incorrect expression, but it serves to acknowledge plainly our ignorance of the cause of each particular variation. This is not a small problem, because natural selection is not a creative force. It does not innovate, but merely selects what is already there. Darwin realized that natural selection allows innovation to spread, but he did not know where they came from in the first place. To appreciate the magnitude of this problem, consider that every one of the differences between the humans and the first life forms on the earth was once an innovation, an adaptive solution to some unique challenge faced by a living being. It might have been the challenge of converting the light energy from the sun into living matter. Yes, photosynthesis, right? Or the challenge of converting another living thing into food, or simply of moving from one place to another. Every square meter of the Earth's surface, every cubic meter of oceans, every meadow, forest, and desert, every city and suburb is packed to the limits with organisms, and each organism exhibits countless such innovations. Fundamental ones like photosynthesis and respiration, of course. Protective ones like reptilian scales and insulating feathers. Supportive one like connective tissue and skeletons. Yes, of course. Some are complex with hundreds of moving parts, others are not. But no matter how large or small, from the 10 feet of a blue whale's tail fluke to the 10 microns of a bacterium's flagellum, every single one exists because, at some point, since life's origin, the light variation occurred, of course. Selection cannot create all this variation. A few decades after Darwin, Hugo de Broglie expressed it best when he said that natural selection may explain the survival of the fittest, but it cannot explain the arrival of the fittest. Emphasis added. And if we do not know what explains its arrival, then we do not understand the very origin of life's diversity. Life can innovate. It has innovability. What is more, it can innovate while preserving what works through the faithful inheritance. It can explore the new while preserving the old. It can be progressive and conservative at the same time. And through the early 20th century, biologists had no idea how that is possible. As we shall see, there is no way they could have known. Another century of discovery was needed before the experimental and computational toolbox of the biology became powerful enough to tackle this question. In fact, looking back, it is remarkable that early 20th century scientists could even distinguish genotypes from the phenotypes. They were as ignorant about the material basis of Mendelian inheritance as Muybridge was of color photography. It was not even clear whether the genes were intangible concepts like gravity or physical objects that could be isolated from the body and studied, of course. Only later would it become clear that genes were very physical, lying on the chromosomes and consisting of DNA, of course. Even before the discovery of genes, physical reality, Mendel's discovery fanned the flames under an old controversy that had simmered since Darwin. Discrete, granular, particulate inheritance flies in the face of an obvious fact that all of us are familiar with. If a 6-foot-tall man and a 5-foot-tall woman have children, then discrete inheritance demands that their children should be as tall as either parents, 5 or 6 feet, but never in between. Wow. Because of its threshold, right? But we all know that the children's heights lies on a continuum, as do the shape of their faces, the color of their skin, the contours of their bones, and so on. Naturalists, since Darwin found such a continuous, blending inheritance everywhere around them, in the yield of crops, the weight of eggs, the size of leaves, in brief, in the most features of organisms. This kind of variation is clearly important in nature, of course. The controversy lays around the question of which kind of variation, continuous or discrete, was more important for evolution. The naturalist or gradualist school of thought, Darwin was an early adherent, emphasized the small, continuous variation that we see all around us. The other school, Mendelist, mutationist, or salutationist, believed in the large, discrete variants that Mendel had studied. In a cartoon version of this dispute, a gradualist would imagine that the many petals of a garden rose emerged from its 5 petaled ancestors through the gradual addition of the petals over many generations. A mutationist, on the other hand, would argue that the multifoliate rows could have appeared in a single salutational macromutation from this ancestor, of course. Looking back, this debate seemed just as important as a question that kept medieval scholastics busy. How many angels can dance on the head of a pin? But it just about pierced the heart of Darwinism. For the Mendelists believed less in the natural selection than in the power of mutation to bring forth new traits. Hello, Arina-san. Hey.
Hello, Jaco-san. Are you outside?
Oh, no. I'm recording it now. Can I call you back after reading? No.
Recording?
Yeah, I'm
It's
not.
time to.
Yeah, I know.
go to
I know.
sleep.
I'm not sleepy. I took a nap, like a 1 hour, 2 hours. That is why I'm not sleepy. Can I call you? Yeah, can I call you back in 10 minutes? Because I am finishing recording. Okay. Thank you. Could you please tell me how you are before we finish phone call?
I'm extremely exhausted.
I see. Do you have anything? Do you have anything to eat? Do you have something?
I have to go outside for coffee, for milk.
So are you about to go outside? Okay. So I will call you. Okay. Watch out for cars, please. Okay. Okay. Bye bye. Good job for today. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. In their view, the real drivers behind life's evolution were large mutations that created individuals far outside of the norm of their species. Hopeful monsters is what the German-born zoologist Richard Goldschmidt would call them, citing as one of his examples the benthic flatfish that live on the ocean floor, which have both eyes on the same side of the head. Yeah. The Japanese people eat this fish a lot. Although the mentalist would turn out to be wrong, most evolutionary change does indeed occur gradually and involves natural selection. They did have a point. The real mystery of evolution is not selection, but the creation of new phenotypes. But they were born too early. They could speculate widely, but had no way to solve the mystery, and the controversy between the two camps continued well into the 20th century until powerful new insights would dissolve it. That process began when a long-known fact became newly appreciated. Genetic change happens not just in the individuals, but in populations, of course.